Alright everybody, how we doing today? You may hear some music in the background, I think that's pretty much fine. So, South Korea pulls intelligence deal with Japan back from the brink. This is from Reuters, and if you're not familiar, there's been some tension between South Korea and Japan recently for Japan's unapologetic attitude toward what happened during the occupation. If you're not familiar, Japan did occupy the Korean peninsula for quite some time, and many Korean men and athletes had to take Japanese names. The women were taken as comfort women. They were basically treated as prostitutes. Many Japanese who are Japanese elitists and believe that Japanese is superior to everybody don't want to admit that this is the case. I've literally had a guy basically shout at me in my own comment section about it. It's the truth, though. You could read the entire page on Wikipedia or many other sites, and even the occupation of Bajor from Star Trek DS9 is a pretty close proxy for the situation. It was very, very similar. It is almost eerily similar. But in spite of the rising tensions, the governments are trying to make nice with each other. They're actually being more diplomatic about it than their citizens are, which is actually kind of shocking. But nonetheless, from Reuters, it says South Korea on Friday made a last-minute decision to stick with its critical intelligence sharing deal with Japan, a dramatic reversal after months of frigid relations complicating by painful wartime history. The decision announced by South Korea's presidential Blue House is welcomed by Washington. The United States has pressured its two Asian allies to set aside their feud and maintain the General Security Military Information Agreement, or GSOMIA, seen as linchpin of a trilateral security cooperation. This decision sends a positive message that like-minded allies can work through bilateral disputes, a spokeswoman for the U.S. State Department said. We encourage South Korea and Japan to continue sincere discussions to ensure a lasting solution to historic issues, she said, adding that Washington strongly believed that defense and security issues should be kept separate from other areas of their relationship. Also note that the relationship between South Korea and Japan has also devolved to where many South Koreans are being told to refuse to buy Japanese products because the Japanese are hateful people and we don't like them and blah blah blah. Boycott Japan, don't support them, don't buy their stuff. Which is also what a lot of Americans are now saying about China. Of course, we have more reason for that. Because the Chinese government is just one moral lapse after another, and they do nothing about it. But the diplomatic thaw also has implications for trade as the rift worsened this year. Japan put export curbs on materials used to make semiconductors, threatening the global supply chain of chips, a pillar of the South Korean economy. Seoul decided to suspend a previous notice to Japan that it would stop sharing intelligence once the current pact ran out at midnight. On Friday, Kim Yoo-goon, Deputy Director of South Korea's National Security Office, said, adding it had done so on the condition the agreement could be terminated at any time. Japan has expressed its understanding, Kim told a briefing just hours before the deal was due to end. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said South Korea had made a strategic decision in sticking with the pact and that bilateral relations were vital. News of this decision quickly grabbed the limelight at the Group of 20, or G20, foreign minister meetings being held in the central Japanese city of Nagoya. An almost unheard-of move, Japanese Foreign Minister Toshimitsu Motegi briefly stepped out of a bilateral meeting with his Russian counterpart to address reporters. My understanding is that South Korean government took the strategic decision given the current security environment, Motegi said, adding he would meet the South Korean foreign minister during the G20. South Korea's foreign minister, Kang Kyung-hwa, had been notable for his absence at the G20. Her attendance had not been formally confirmed, and she only arrived in Nagoya late on Friday after the decision has been announced. It sounds to me like they realized that this shit was going too far, and they wanted to try and reverse course once they realized that they were basically getting smashed on the rocks, metaphorically speaking. But honestly, the tension is understandable given how, generally speaking, any past crime, Japan has frequently had a very unapologetic attitude toward it. I understand that it's not right when someone holds past events against you just because of your skin color, because you have no agency in that shit. You had no choice. No more than you can choose being white or black. But to be so completely unapologetic when there's literal survivors from the occupation still alive today is cruel. It's very cruel. But the attitudes between the two are becoming a problem, and I think their governments are realizing that and they're trying to do something. So, mad respect that they're trying to fix the situation. But the dispute has its roots in a decades-old disagreement over compensation for South Korean laborers forced to work at Japanese firms during World War II. It has deepened this year and upended trade between the two countries. South Korea was the third largest market for Japanese exports last year, accounting for $53 billion, according to IMF data. Japan remains a major player in specialized chip components, even though it was overtaken a chip maker years ago by South Korea. Japan's trade ministry said it hoped to hold talks with South Korea on export controls, but it would not immediately put Seoul back on trade whitelist that fast-tracks exports to its neighbor. Japan's trade ministry had been setting for a particularly frosty meeting between officials from both sides earlier this year, where neither side greeted the other and in front of television cameras faced off in stony silence in a narrow room. South Korean media widely reported that their officials had been given a cold reception by Tokyo and that the meeting took place in a room that looked like a garage. Motegi denied that the United States had put pressure on Tokyo over GSOMIA, which was sealed in 2016 after a years-long U.S. push for a better joint response to North Korea's growing military threat, but acknowledged close communication with Washington in the matter. To make matters worse, it seems that the U.S. has added the tension. As a South Korean official said on Friday, there was no deadline set yet to resolve the differences, and Seoul would terminate the pact if agreement was not reached. Seoul's decision has also come amid increasingly public displays of tension, with the United States rare in the nearly 7 decades of their alliance. The United States broke off defense cost talks this week for demanding that South Korea raise its annual contribution for maintaining the U.S. contingent to $5 billion, more than 5 times what it pays now. And old Donnie Trump has railed against what he says are inadequate contributions from allies toward defense costs. Yep. In fact, he's been complaining about NATO and various others for not meeting their dues. But, go figure. U.S. alliances, for whatever reason, have historically been like that. But all in all, this is understandable. I'm glad they're trying to amend things and make peace. But if Koreans are so insistent on getting some measure of justice or revenge, just keep doing what you're doing. I mean, as far as your economics, you're actually replacing Japan as a major microchip financier. I have a South Korean cell phone, an HTC, and Samsung is a South Korean company. They're becoming an economic force. Slowly, but they're getting there. Like, if you really want that, then you can just outcompete Japan. Take their place. That should be justice enough. If they won't give it to you, that should be enough to satiate. It won't make the memory go away, but at least then, at least then your nation will be succeeding. Which is more than can be said for your northern brother. Anyway, peace.